This is not history, this is memory. But this memory has a problem. It has been retold so many times by poets, by painters, by kings who wanted to believe in it, that the real woman underneath the legend has almost disappeared. Her name was Shirin. She was a Christian princess from Armenia. She became the most famous woman in Persian history without ever being Persian. Poets wrote about her for 1,000 years. Ferdowsi, Nizami, Rumi referenced her. Persian miniature paintings show her face in palaces from Istanbul to Delhi, and almost none of it is accurate. The real Shirin was not a fairy tale. She was a woman who spent 30 years loving a man who was brilliant, powerful, and consistently unable to choose her first, until the end. But to understand why her story became a legend that outlasted the empire she lived in, you have to go back to where it started. A girl on a horse, a king who saw her, and 30 years that neither of them could escape. Armenia in the late 6th century is not a peaceful place to grow up. It sits between two empires, Byzantium to the west, Persia to the east, and both of them treat it like a corridor. Armies march through, governors change. The people learn very quickly that the only thing more dangerous than an enemy is an ally who wants something from you. You are Shirin, Christian, Armenian, a princess of the royal court of Khosrow I of Persia, not by birth, but by position. You were raised there, educated there. You speak Persian, Greek, Armenian. You ride better than most men at court. You are 20 years old and you have never been particularly interested in the kings who passed through. Then you meet Khosrow II. He is not yet king. He is a prince fleeing his own father's court after a failed rebellion. He arrives in Armenia with almost nothing, a few loyal soldiers, a horse, and the particular desperation of a man who has bet everything on one move and lost. You see him before he sees you. Later, the poets will write that it was instant, that the universe rearranged itself in a single moment, that love arrived like a thunderstorm. The reality is more interesting. You watch him for 3 days before you speak to him. You watch how he treats his soldiers, how he makes decisions, how he handles humiliation. Because a prince in exile is humiliated constantly, and how a man handles that tells you everything about who he actually is. On the 3rd day, you decide he is worth knowing. This decision will cost you 30 years. Khosrow returns to Persia in 591 AD and takes the throne. He does not forget you. He sends for you. You go. This is the first choice. And here is what history does not tell you about it. You have options. You are a princess. You have land, position, your own court. You are not desperate. You are not powerless. You choose to go to Persia because you want to, not because you have to. The Sassanid court in Ctesiphon is the most magnificent in the world. The palace walls are covered in silk. The gardens have running water and channels of carved marble. At dinner, musicians play behind screens so the king can hear music without being distracted by watching the players. And at the center of all of it is Khosrow, King of Kings, Shahanshah, a man who believes he was born to rule and has spent every year of his life proving it. He is brilliant, charming, generous when it costs him nothing, and he is not ready to choose you. Not yet. Not officially. This is the second choice. And this one is harder. You stay anyway. Here is what history does not tell you about the next 20 years. Khosrow marries other women. Politically necessary marriages, alliances with Byzantium, with local noble families, with anyone whose loyalty he needs to buy. He marries a Byzantine princess named Maria. He marries others whose names the sources do not even bother to record. You remain at court. Not as a wife, as something the Persian language has a word for, and the English language does not. a position of intimate power that is not quite marriage and not quite anything else. You are present at his councils. He consults you. He writes you poetry. He builds you a palace. He just does not choose you, not in the way that would cost him something. Every woman who has ever loved a man who was almost ready, who was nearly there, who just needed a little more time, understands this specific kind of waiting. You wait, but you are not passive while you wait. This is the part the legend gets wrong. You manage estates. You correspond with the Armenian church. You maintain your own political relationships independent of Khosrow's court. You are building something of your own, slowly, in the years when he is building his empire and not quite finding time to put you at the center of it. Some women in your position would have left. Some would have schemed. Some would have given up. You do something more dangerous. You stay exactly as you are, yourself, unchanged, unwilling to become smaller to fit into whatever space he had available that week. This is the third choice, and it is the one that eventually breaks him open. 612 A.D. Khosrow, at the height of his power. His armies have conquered Jerusalem. They have taken the true cross, Christianity's most sacred relic, and brought it to Persia. His empire stretches from Egypt to the borders of India. He is, by any measure, the most powerful king in the world. He finally marries you. Not because he needs to, not because it is politically useful, because 30 years of you being exactly yourself has done what no strategy could have done. He has run out of reasons not to. The wedding is celebrated across the empire. You are approximately 50 years old. The poets will later write that you were eternally young, that time could not touch you. This is what men write about women they cannot fully understand. What is true? You have waited longer than most people would. You have done it without losing yourself. And now you have what you chose. For 7 years you have it. 619 A.D. The empire begins to crack. Byzantine Emperor Heraclius launches a counter-offensive that will last 12 years. Persian armies that seemed invincible begin losing. The treasury that Khosrow filled with conquest begins emptying with war. And Khosrow changes. Power that is absolute and unchallenged produces one kind of man. Power that is suddenly threatened produces another. Khosrow becomes paranoid. He executes generals who lose battles. He raises taxes on populations already exhausted by decades of war. He stops listening. You watch this happen. You tell him what you see. He does not want to hear it. In 628 A.D., his own son, Kavad II, leads a rebellion of Persian nobles who have had enough. Khosrow is captured. He is imprisoned in the same palace where he held his greatest feasts, and then Kavad sends him a message, a list of everything he is accused of, every mistake, every cruelty, every general executed, every province destroyed. Khosrow reads the list. He sends back one response. He asks to see Shirin. She is not permitted to go. 3 days later, Kavad has his father executed. The new king of Persia sends you a message within the week. It is polite, almost gentle. He acknowledges your position, your years of service to his father, your status at court, and then he proposes marriage. You are in the room where Khosrow used to sit when he wanted to think, the room where he would call for you when the councils had gone badly and he needed someone who would tell him the truth, the room where he once read you a poem he had written. Badly. He knew it was bad. He read it anyway, and waited for your response with something that looked almost like nervousness. You read Kavad's message. You set it down. You walk to Khosrow's tomb. What happens next, the sources agree on. The details vary. The meaning does not. Shirin enters the tomb of Khosrow II. She does not come back out. The woman who spent 30 years choosing one man makes her final choice beside his grave. The poets who came after her spent 1,000 years trying to explain what she did and why. Nizami wrote an entire epic. Ferdowsi referenced her. Artists painted her face across 3 continents. She became the symbol of perfect love, of devotion, of the woman who loved completely. What they could not quite explain, what the legend smooths over, is the specific quality of the choice. Shirin did not die because she was broken. She did not die because she had nothing left. She died because she had spent 30 years building a self that was entirely her own, and that self had made one central decision. One person, chosen freely, again and again. And she was not willing to unmake it for a king who had murdered the man she chose. This was not weakness. This was the most absolute form of the only power she had ever actually possessed. The power to choose. And she used it to the end. The Sassanid Empire that Khosrow and Shirin lived in collapsed within 4 years of his death. The Arab conquest of 636 AD ended a civilization that had existed for 4 centuries. The palaces were emptied, the silk walls were stripped, the marble water channels ran dry. But the story survived. Every empire that came after, Arab, Mongol, Ottoman, Mughal, absorbed the story of Shirin and made it their own. Because it is not really a story about Persia. It is a story about what it costs to love someone fully, and what it means to stay true to that choice when everything around it has collapsed. Was Shirin a fool for waiting 30 years? Was she a hero for refusing to survive on different terms? Leave a comment. I want to know what you think. And if this story held you, subscribe, because the next video is about another woman who spent her life choosing one thing completely in a court that spent every year trying to make her choose something else. That story is already written.